We're beginning Katan Daf, Mesech Moed Katan Daf. We begin on the top of the Amud. We continue the discussion of the previous Daf regarding doing a Avodah on Chol HaShemayim. Which corresponds to Kazik and the Cheskot. Anytime Daf Chaim, Krishna was joining us for today's Daf. What we're discussing today's Daf are many halachas regarding working on Chol HaMoed, including Mikabli Kiboilis, to contract non-Jewish workers to build or to work a field out of the Tchum under an arrangement of Kabbalah. So let's explain. A kabbalah is a contractor. He's paid to do a job over a certain amount of time. As opposed to a shiur, he's a hired worker. He's paid by the hour, by the day, by the week, etc. Now, the fundamental difference is that a shiur is considered working for the person who hired him. So therefore, a non-Jewish shiur is not allowed to work for a Jewish boss on Shabbos because essentially he's doing the malacha for the yid. But a kabbalah, on the other hand, he's considered working for himself, because he can work whenever he wants to, as long as he gets the job done by the agreed time. So therefore, a non-Jewish kabbalah is essentially allowed to work for a Jewish boss on Shabbos if there's enough time to complete it before Shabbos. Now, however, in a field which is known to belong to a yid, that's only allowed chutz l'tchum, far from town, where Jewish people are not going to see him, because teichat tchum, it is forbidden, because close to town, people are going to see and think that he's a shiur working for the Jew, and that's a problem about marasai and about appearance of wrongdoing. Kaboilis b'moed la'soisa la'achar moed. We're also going to discuss regarding hiring workers on Chol HaMoed to perform malacha after Yom Tov, and the Talmudic principle kol shu'oisa imol nachar ba'isa. Whatever you could do, you could tell a non-Jew to do. Whatever you cannot do, you're not going to tell a non-Jew to do. I'm reading Behema regarding discussing mating animals, medayir, to place animals into a field to fertilize it. If someone had wine in a vat, whether he can fill and seal the barrels in the usual way. That's the halacha of the next Mishnah. The Gemara discussed several principles regarding malacha on Chol HaMoed, including davar other b'moed, where it's permitted to do malacha to prevent a loss, and shina b'moed b'davar, whether when you're preventing a loss, if you have to still do the malacha in an unusual way. Ein l'meid d'zu mizu, one cannot really compare one heter of Chol HaMoed to another. And Mariman, whether it's permitted to deliberately prepare too much for Yom Tov, and then you're going to have leftovers, and then you're really planning to have it for after Yom Tov. So we're going to current Daf Yud Beis, top line of the Amud. Amar Shmuel says Mikabli Kiboilis, someone that takes a contractual obligation, meaning he gives work to a non-Jew with kablanis. Like we said, is that you got to get the job done. I'm not paying you for the hour; it's for the job. Which that's an important principle because that's what we call Avra Daita de Nafshe. Whenever he's working, he's really doing it for himself because I don't care when you work or how you work, as long as you're giving the product. So when such a non-Jew does it on Shabbos, if it's b'teichat tchum, if it's within the tchum, it's still going to be aser. Why is it going to be aser? What do you mean? He's doing it for himself. No, because everybody knows that this is this person's project, and they're going to say, oh, probably today on Shabbos he gave it to him, which koiveh malachtoi, which is, even if you tell a non-Jewish contractor, who again, he doesn't have to do it, he can do whatever he wants to, but if you tell him to do it on Shabbat, that's going to be forbidden. And Rashi actually addresses the question. Beis Hill says in the first parak in Shabbos of Yitzayin and Beis that you're allowed to give clothing to come to the cleaners an hour before Shabbos. You're allowed to give him your stuff for the cleaners, even though it's the next block over, it's within the Tchum. So Rashi says laundering a garment is something that's not recognizable. Therefore there's no suspicion. But regarding something that's recognizable, whatever his contractual obligation it is, if it's within the tchum, it's going to be forbidden because of chashad, because of suspicion. People are going to think that you told them to do it on Shabbos, which that's forbidden. But, says Shmuel, chutz tchum, but if let's say it's out of the tchum of Shabbos, no one could walk there, so there's no problem about marasai, no one's going to see him doing your work on Shabbos, then it's permitted because technically you didn't tell him to do it on Shabbos, and he's a contractor, which the malach he's doing is never really for you, it's always for himself, then it's going to be permitted. Now, Amar Papa says, but the truth is, he says, we didn't say that it's going to be permitted if it's out of the chum, only if there's no town that's near where he's doing the work for you. But if there is a town which is near the place where he's doing work, meaning to where those non-Jewish workers are working for you, well then it would be forbidden because those people know that those Gentiles are doing malacha for the Jew, and they're going to say that he gave it to do on Shabbos, which again, you're running back into the problem about Maris Ayin, and therefore then, even then it's going to be forbidden. Now, moreover, Amar Masharsha says, V'chileka, most of the Mekabel Hasam, Now, if there is no town that's close by, where you have people working for you somewhere out in the Hicks, and there's no Jewish settlement anywhere near there. We didn't say this. I don't know if Hicks is an appropriate word or not. I mean somewhere out, far out, that there's no one around over there. So we didn't say that it's going to be permitted only on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Like we said, you're not going to have people walking over there because there's also no other Jewish people, no town near there either. So there's no one going to walk there because you can't walk past the Tchum. Which is another time that you're not allowed to do malacha, and therefore, as we'll see later on, whatever you can't do, you can't have a non-Jew do for you. So the shchichi inchi the azam hasalasim, but on Cholamayid, everyone's taking the Cholamayid trips. And people will travel to the farms to, where way out where you might have work being done to you. Then it's usher, because people are going to say, "Oh, he gave it to them to do today." Which again, even though it's a non-Jew, but yet whatever you can't do, you can't tell a non-Jew. So Shabbos and Yom Tov, you're not going to run into the problem because no one's going to know, because no one could go with a car or out of the Tchum. But on Cholamayid, where people might drive there, and people might go there. And even if it's beyond the Tchum, so then it's going to be forbidden.
It used to be done a kavod kapschis, so why are we choishes that people aren't doing that?
Halavai, alam from zayin epis, then there would be no problem. Arasayim, chashud, the world, or the world would give in our world, would it be like that? But that's what it is. People do suspect, and they say he's doing work. So the Gemara brings a story related to this halacha that Mar Zutra and Bereder of Nachman. Banula partner, so they built for him a mansion through Mikavli Kabbalah, through a contractor, and it was chut al-tchum. It was out of the tchum. He was making his getaway that he goes. Maybe he was in Iceland somewhere, or somewhere. He made us somewhere so far away we can get away from people. We don't like people so much. We need to get away a little bit once in a while. So he made this mansion. So they came to town, to where he made his house. They didn't come into his mansion. They decided they're going to sleep out in some igloo somewhere. They didn't want to come into his house. Those that say that actually, he himself didn't go into this mansion that they built for him. He says, what's the problem? This is the halacha we started off with. Shmuel said, if you hired a contractor, if it's b'teichat tchum, if it's in the tchum, fine. Also, it's going to be asa because people. It was made through a forbidden medium because it's problematic as maras ayin. It's chutz mutter, but it was made out of the tchum, like this mansion was made way beyond any Jewish settlement. It says mutter. So who cares that the Gentile did the malach on Shabbos? What's the problem? So the Gemara answers Adam Chashav Shabbos. A distinguished personality is different. We hold him to a higher standard, and therefore maybe even he himself didn't go in because yes. Although maybe it's permitted chutz tchum, which sometimes I do see people having contractors who are doing work on Shabbos, which is not mutter, even a contractor, because of this halacha, this Gemara. But chutz tchum, it would be permitted, but a chashav person, even chutz tchum, it's different because you have to treat it as a more severe halacha for adam chashav. Now the Ikadam and the others say a slightly different version. So you say betivna b'hadai. The reason why was because actually he assisted them with straw for their work. So since he assisted, so therefore they held it usher, because that's not just regularly having the Gentile doing it for you. You were giving them what they needed, and you were there for the Shabbos. So since he assisted, it was Meseyeya in the Devar Avera, so therefore they held that it would be usher to go ahead and benefit from that mansion. Now the Gemara continues with these halachas of Malacha and Cholamayid. Rav Chama sharluhu la'avungere debei Resh Galusa. Avungere is those who prepare the tables of the household of the Resh Galusa, which again he was the Jewish minister in the diaspora. So he permitted them to do their work on Cholamayid, meaning if the table breaks, they're allowed to fix it. Somebody says, I'll tell you why. They don't take wages for what they're doing. Sharshuye, it's just some gain that they could eat together with the Resh Galusa, who the Komashar Shulei. That's the gain they're getting, and therefore it's not really considered malacha. It's interesting how to define and qualify what malacha exactly, as we brought up in the past, what exactly is aser. But it sounds like that this is not considered as malacha because you're not really getting paid for it. And you're not getting paid, it's not a job. Not a job, you're not doing anything aser on the Chalash Moed. So you can fix the tables because you're not really getting paid for it, it just lets you eat by the Suda. And therefore, we're not bothered by that. Gemara continues on this topic. Turn above on the Bryson. The Kabbalah keep bailis b'moed. You're allowed to go ahead and hire a non-Jewish contractor. So you're allowed to hire him on Chol Hamoed to get the work done after Chol Hamoed. But if you want him to do the work on Chol Hamoed, that would be forbidden. And this is a very important klal, which very Reuven Flatbush told me. This is like this klal. You have to follow this klal. People don't know this, and this happens all the time. It happens past Shabbos. Klal ishal dava. The rule of this is kol shu'ayis, whatever you could do. Oyim lanachim v'aysim. You can zog an agay and they're canteen. Then you can tell the Gentile he can do. Whatever you cannot do. You cannot tell the non-Jew to do. Genikshan with this guy comes around. Everyone does whatever they want to do. So you're ashamed. It's people don't even. They forgot that it's halacha v'amir la'akim, and that's it. Mekim to and that's it. Do this, do that, do that. No, the rule is whatever you cannot do, you cannot tell a non-Jew to do. Now, obviously, there are some exceptions, but those are the exceptions to the rule. And you have to be oisa sheilas chacham because it's not something that. So that's for Shabbos, for Yom Tov. Chol Hamoed also. Our Gemara is talking about this. Masech might go into Machal. Now do malacha. You can't. Whatever you can't do, you can't tell a guy. Later discussion. Tanya Nechulin another brayso. Mekablan kibaylis b'moed. You can hire a contractor on Chol Hamoed, a non-Jewish contractor, to do the work after Yom Tov. But even then, when you're hiring him, no measuring, no weighing, no counting, the way you do it in the weekday. Can't do the you can't do that even that you can't start. The measuring, he's coming around with his tools and zachan. Can't even do that. You can hire him, but you can't do more than that. Tell me when the Brayso again continuing to halachas of malacha chol hamoed. Emar bein behembi, you cannot mount an animal, meaning you cannot grab hold of the animal and bring the male on the female animal to mount. But because you're doing malacha. Because again, that's a tircha, and therefore that's forbidden. Okay, but similarly, Emar bein b'chayr, you now go ahead and mount a firstborn animal, which you're doing malacha, and it says that in the Devarim Tezvav, you now do work with the firstborn animal. That's what you believe when you have a carbon that became invalidated, which you're allowed to slaughter it and eat it, but you now go ahead and do work with it. That would be a violation there too. Another brayso, you now mount an animal he says there's an exception. If you have a female donkey that's petitioning that wants to mate, then you're allowed to mate on it a male. And the reason is it shouldn't cool down. It sounds like the female donkeys, if they're in the mood, they're in the mood. If not, you're not going to get for a while. So that it shouldn't cool down, then you're allowed to go ahead and mount it. Now, our sharkal behemoths, all other animals, what you could do is machnis nesel. What you could do is you could bring them into the corral, which is the area where they hang out, and then they mate by themselves. But you yourself to do the malacha of mating them, that's forbidden. Talking about in the brayso, continuing a related discussion, ein medayrin. Medayrin is that they also would gather animals, but into a field, so that when they relieve themselves, that's fertilizer for the fields. So you now do that to cause them to come into the field. If they came on their own, okay, then it's permitted. But you cannot assist the animal to come into the field, or if, let's say it's a Gentile who has the animal, you cannot assist them to take them from place to place to say, okay, come here, Julio, come here. You see that? Go, come, to fertilize the whole field. Even if they're coming on their own, can't assist them on these days. And you also don't give them over one of your assistants, lunaer, to watch. For example, let's say they're Gentiles that's selling them their sheep. Moreover, Shabbos. Let's say he was hired for the week to fertilize your field. So you hire the gardener, you hire the fertilizer man. He's coming with these things to put down on your field. He was hired by the week. Or hired for the month. Or hired for the year, an annual contract. Or hired for the Shemitah cycle, for a 7-year cycle. So then the halacha is Messiah. There you're allowed to assist him. The reason for that is because, like we said about kablanis is interesting. It's not like yours, it's like theirs. It's like as if it's the Gentiles. So therefore you could assist him. Because this is his. It doesn't make a difference when he does it. It's his job. He just gives you a final product. Now, there is a gears over here by this next Aleph, the Rashi brings, now the Gentile could do it in Shabbos and Yom Tov. U'misayin b'mayid. Now this that you could assist is only a chalash shemayid, where, in other words, you could assist this hired labor to help fertilize. U'moislam shomer, and you could give him a shomer, l'nar, send them to watch their sheep, which they're using to fertilize. Again, since he's not hired just for Shabbos, so the fact that he's doing this work is like, it's like his work, and therefore you're allowed to assist him. That's what Tanna Kama says. Rabbi Yomer, there's different explanations. The Rishonim how to explain these next words of Rabbi. The way the Mefarish says, it's not so clear, but he says, b'Shabbos, if a person wants to help that hired labor on Shabbos, so b'Teiva, he could do it as a Teiva. In other words, he has to do it for free, not with wages. B'Yom Tov, you could do it as a little more lenient, you could do it b'Mezainis for food. But Moed, you could do it b'Schar, you could even do it with wages. Now, Rabbi Yisrael says, Hilchas like Rabbi, Hilchas like Rabbi. So again, it's hard. According to the way the Mefarish sounds like helping that labor. Or others say, how could the laborer do it for you? If it could be, if he has to do it for free, or for food, or he could even do it with wages, depending on if it's Shabbos, Yom Tov, or Cholash Moed. Here I'll look at the next Mishnah. Similarly, it's really the same thing as the Gemara will explain why we need both. As the previous Amid, opening up this parak of Misha Hafach, we spoke about olives, and it's going to be a loss. So we say b'chein. Same thing in Misha Yenu. So we're going, instead of olive oil, we're talking about wine. Misha Yenu b'teichabar. Someone had this wine in the pit, which is in front of the wine press. That vessel that the wine falls into from the vat is called the bar, called the pit. Now, he has his wine in the pit. V'idu evil. Now, the same cases we said in the previous stuff. Something of a mourning happened, so he's sitting in Shiva, he can't do work, or something beyond his control, or the workers misled him and they never ended up coming. So the Tanna Kama, Rabbi Yasi, he says, which the other way around, he says why we're switching the order from the previous Mishnah, but Zayla v'Gleimer. He holds that, you could empty out the whole barrel, v'Gafin, you could seal the barrel, Kedarka, in a normal way with a regular seal. That's the Rabbi Yasi. As he had said the same thing in the previous Mishnah. Yudam, he says, no, you cannot seal it in the normal way. Rather, isolate limudim, you make boards, so that it shouldn't ferment and sour. Because if you don't seal it, it's going to ferment. But more than that, you can't finish the whole production. Says the Gemara, which is the obvious question, but why do you need to say both these Mishnayos, two separate cases of oil and of wine? I'll tell you why. Yesh Mini Kamai said, you only said the first Mishnah on the previous Daf, Bahi, what we call the ratio of the Mishnah, regarding that of olives, that's your Kamer Bisi. That's your Bisi says you could seal it and you could finish the whole production in normal way. Mishum the Mishcha, because oil is very expensive and Nafish per se, it's going to be a huge loss. So, double of it. But wine is not such a big loss. I would say agrees with you that you can't finish the whole production. Literally, okay, you could make temporary boards, but that's what you have to say. Now, even by wine, you can finish in the regular production. And the same thing in the reverse. Yashmin Masai said, we only said the case, the last one, that of the wine, but he come review. I would say over there, review this says that you cannot finish the whole production because it's not such a loss. But regarding the ratio of that of our previous Mishnah of oil, in Rabbi Yasi, I would say Rabbi Yasi that hold you can finish the whole production, you don't need to do any shinui because it's a big loss. But we have to say both Mishnayos say each one keeps their opinion in whether the one of the bigger or the smaller loss. Now, related to Amar Yitzchak Berabi says Mantana, who's the Tana in general that holds shina b'moed bedavar ha'avad that you have to still do on Yom Tov, even though it's something of a big loss, you have to do a shina, you have to switch it up a little bit. You can't do it the regular way. He says you want to like Rabbi Yasi. No, because we see in the Mishnah, Rabbi Yasi holds that if it's a loss, you can do it in the regular way. And Rabbi Yasi says, Rabbi Yasi is like Rabbi Yasi, as Toy said, brought in the previous stuff, as recorded that yes, we pass in that davar oven, you can do it in the normal way, you don't have to do it with a shina. Now, boy minay Rav Nachman Yitzchak. Ask from Nachman Yitzchak. Ma'ula meisha chavita. What's the halacha? Can you seal a barrel the shikha of beer b'chala d'meyad or chala moed? Amlu b'says. Sinai Amar, Sinai is a term of Rav Yosef, as we find in the Gemara at the end of Brachas. He says, we just quoted this before, Rav Yosef had said, Halach Rav Yosef, that you could seal it in the normal way. And he says, no. The reason why I'm asking you is because even though Rav Yosef, when Rav Yosef say this halacha is b'chamer, is by wine, did he say it by beer? Because the Gemara back, he says, what do you mean? Chamer tamamai. What's the reason why wine lets you do it no more? It's not as much as oil, but it's a big loss. So shechanami is b'beseda. Beer also has a loss, so therefore, of course, he would hold that you could seal the normal way. Because Abaye says, Amaliyah, my mother told me, Barshis Save Vishoya, if you have 6 sa and it's sealed, Mi Bartamni B'Leishiyah, that's better than 8 sa that's not sealed. In other words, better have beer that's sealed, that contains only 6 saw, from beer that's in a large vessel that holds 8 saw, but it's not covered. So therefore it's also going to be a loss, and therefore you could seal in the normal way. It says an interesting statement. It says, Hilchas Moed, halachas of Chol Moed, are kehilchas kutim b'halacha, like the laws of kutim in halacha. What does that mean? The Gemara tells the Chol Daf Dalet that by kutim, they have an interesting status. Wherever we have a chazaka, we presume that they do something, then we can presume it. But if they're not muchzik, then they're not muchzik. We can't presume that they're doing it. So the Gemara says, what halacha are you saying? The halachas of Chol Moed are like the halachas of kutim. So Daniel Bakatino, Amarav, he says, to say that it's like a barren woman, which, or it's a woman that can't have any children, where you only have her body. That's the same thing of the halachas of Chol Moed, meaning you can't derive anything from it. You can't say, oh, wait a second, just like this is mutter, this is also mutter. No, rather like kutim. We don't say by a kuti, oh, just like I see he does this mitzvah and does that mitzvah, he must also do that mitzvah. No, we don't know that one from the other. By the kutim, we say only what we know they do. Whatever we don't know, we don't say, fine, the shine, the yid. We don't say that kutim have a different halacha. So that's the same thing with Chol Moed, as the Gemara illustrates this. Amar Shmuel says, Zayfsin kusta, you could put pitch, which is type of a sealant, on a jug, but ve'in zayfsin chavita, but you cannot put pitch on a barrel. So although you would say, wait a second, I could do a jug and I can't do a barrel? Yeah. And Rav Dimi, he actually says the opposite. He says, Zayfsin chavita, you could put pitch on the barrel. Ve'in zayfsin kusta, you cannot put pitch on the jug. So you see how delicate the halachas are that you can't compare one with the other. Now the Gemara actually, once we brought in, explains this machlekes.
Is this a refutation for Rav Nachman Yitzchak?
What?
Does this refute Rav Nachman Yitzchak?
Which you
that he learned that you could learn from Rav Yossi, just like he said by wine, you could also seal.
I hear what you say. How could he have compared wine and beer? I hear. Unless he's saying that's a principle, and here it's going to be different principles. It's a good question. Here, because here it makes it sound like that each one's coming from a certain principle, as the Gemara explains. That Mar, or Rav Dimi, who he says that you could put pitch on the barrel, he was chayish l'b'seder. He was concerned for loss. Now, by a barrel, it's obviously a huge loss, because it's a large quantity if you're not going to put pitch on it, because there's a lot of wine in there. A jug, not such a big loss, because a jug is a small vessel. So therefore, he held jug is also. So, but his primary guiding principle is that of a loss. So the bigger loss you're allowed to do. Whereas a Mar Shmuel, who said that you can only put pitch on a jug, because chayish l'tircha, he was concerned for a tircha, yiseir. And by a jug, it's not such a big tircha, it's very small. A barrel is a huge tircha, therefore that he held that was asa. So each one was coming from a different principle to say why he held that was mutter and the other one's asa. Another interesting quote, Amabaya, says, like, we have a tradition, Hilchas Moed Katan Shabbos. The laws of Chol Moed are like the laws of Shabbos. We read the laws of Kutim, we read the laws of Shabbos. What do you mean like the laws of Shabbos? So they continue to mid-base, meaning not all the halachas of Shabbos, but 2 categories of Shabbos. Yesh man, you have Hilchas Shabbos, and that's what we're saying for Chol Moed too. You have some things that are pater aval asa. They're exempt, but they're initially forbidden. So therefore, like Rashi, the Mefarashi explains that we said that ein zayfsin, whichever case you held, that you not put pitch on, it means to say you're only not allowed to do it likatchila. But the evid you would not be liable because it's pater aval asa. Now, by yeshman, there are certain halachas, like the ones that we said you could put pitch on, that they're actually likatchila. They're even initially permitted, which is like from the categories of Shabbos. Obviously, you have certain things Shabbos is you get kares for, but there are things pater aval asa and certain things mutlak gechila, and that's the same thing that you have by Hilchas Chol Moed. You could have certain things that are mutlak gechila and certain things that would be pater aval asa. Mar brings a story that Rav Huna chatzim lechatzadam, that his work is harvested b'mayada on Chol Moed. Now, Rav Huna, the Gemara asks, Esvi Rabbi Rav Huna. The Rabbi, his son, asked his father, says from the following brisa. Brisa says, "Toichen and kemach b'mayid." You're allowed to grind flat wheat Chol Moed, l'tzarech hamayid, for the purposes of Yom Tov. But v'shloi l'tzarech hamayid also, but if it's not for the Yom Tov purposes, then it's going to be forbidden. Now, davar sha'avad b'mayid, somebody has to give me a huge loss of money on Chol Moed. Mutal says, "You're allowed to do that on Chol Moed." Davar she'inavad b'mayid is not a huge loss of Chol Moed, then also it's forbidden. Now, but then the brisa qualifies it. But when I say all these halachas that it's going to be at times permitted, it's betlushim la karka if it's detached from the ground. But if it's attached to the ground, I feel it coolly, but even if it's be a total loss, total washout, also it's going to be forbidden. Now, if it doesn't have what to eat, oh, that's a different story. Then kaitza, then you could harvest, and you can bundle it with dushan, you could thresh, you could winnow, bar, you could select for and you could grind, you can do all these malachas. But actually, as long as you don't thresh with cows. But everything barring that is permitted. Now, as Mafarish explains, Rav Huna had what to eat. So why was it permitted for him to go ahead and harvest, which is mechuber, a chalamayt, which is said is aser? So Rav Huna said to him, this is the Bryce is saying that if it's attached, even if it's a total loss, it's going to be forbidden. That's Rabbi Yesi and Yechidahi. It's a singular opinion. The Holy Spirit come and say, we don't like this Bryce. Where do we find that it's Rabbi Yesi? The time I go in the Bryce, Klala, Mishum Rabbi Yesi, name of Rabbi Yesi, he said it's only a Das Yachid. He says this concept that David tells my karka, it's a detached from the ground, even if it's only partial loss, it's going to be permitted. But if I'm a chubal karka, if it's attached to the ground, if it's even total loss, it's going to be forbidden. So therefore, that's like Rabbi Yesi says, I'm not bound to that Das Yachid, therefore it's permitted to do a harvest of mechubal karka. It says the Gemara, wait a second. But here, Rabbi Yesi, if you're saying and you're interpreting that brisa was like Rabbi Yesi, so Yadash Nam then the threshing should be permitted even with the cows, and this is why we're saying this teaching, because it relates back to what we said in Nomen Aleph. Amarav Yitzchak Bar Rabbi says, Man Tana, who's the Tana? In general, the whole Shina b'Moed b'Dava Ovid, that when you're doing a situation of loss, that you still have to switch it up, you have to change it in the normal way. That's the like Rabbi Yesi, because Rabbi Yesi holds you don't have to do any changes. So wait a second, if you're saying it's like Rabbi Yesi, for that halacha, because you want to say he holds that mechubal karka is always usher, but then the other element of the halacha is difficult. Why does he say why can't you do it with a cow? You can do it as normally as you always do it, because that's Rabbi Yesi's opinion, as we said in the Manalach. So Amalach, Rav Huna would tell you, no, hachanami, you're right. You could do it in the normal way you do it. But since every single day you don't normally do it with cows, you don't thresh with cows. Now also it's not considered doing it in an abnormal way when you thresh it without the cows. So therefore, yes, the time of the Brisa is Rabbi Yesi, and again, therefore, he wasn't bound to paskin like that. The mechubal karka is going to be aser. And why does it say it's forbidden with cows? That's because, as the Mafarish says, avshamilsa, it makes a huge commotion, and we don't want to do that on chalamayt. And the fact that it holds you enough to change, it's not considered changing it. Normally, you don't do it with cows anyway, so maintain that and don't do it extra loud and more amplified than normal. Talking about one brisa, continue with the halachas of the brisa that we just brought in regarding what type of malachas you could do, like in preparation of food. So toichin and b'mayla toichamayit. You're allowed to grind wheat on chalishamayit for the purposes of the yamtiv. B'shalot toichamayit, but not for the yamtiv purposes, it's going to be forbidden. Now, v'im tachan, this gets into a related discussion. Let's say you grind it on chalamayit for the purposes of yamtiv. V'haiser, and you have leftovers until after yamtiv. Okay, it is a mutter. That's permitted to eat it after yamtiv. So too, kaitz and eitz and b'mayit. You're allowed to go chop down wood on chalamayit and toichamayit for the purpose of the yamtiv. Somewhere out, to the Pocono, somewhere nice and cold, and you have a fireplace, and you want to cut down some wood and use it for the fireplace. Mimei, you're allowed. But let's say you just want to show the kids a good time, maybe that would be tzarchai mayit, but let's say you stop cutting down for some other thing, also it's going to be forbidden. Now, if it cuts, it's v'haisa, let's say you chop down wood, you had leftovers, and you're coming back to Lakewood, you have an empty trunk, and you want to take back some of that firewood, so harizamot is going to be permitted. Matil and sheikh, another similar halacha, matil and sheikh you're allowed to go ahead and make beer, a chalamayit for the purposes of yamtiv. So, but if it's not for yomtiv purposes, you're not going to be drinking this anyway. But you say, I know my father likes beer. We're going out in Wisconsin, wherever we can make the beer, and he's going to like it, so I'm going to make it for him. So then, so that's forbidden. Not from hittel, but let's say you made the beer, leftovers, as a mutter sense, permitted to bring back for him for have after yomtiv. But as long as you don't make a trick, meaning you don't make more than what you need, and you say, we need for yomtiv. But really, your intention is to have leftover for after Yom Tov. As long as you're not being madim, you're not doing harama, that's permitted. Now, the Gemara asks a contradiction on the last point. But a minute, but that's
Yom Tov we do allow it.
What?
Yom Tov we do allow it.
For
to be marba b'shiur.
Not for
to cook extra.
For when?
For Yom Tov.
Not for chayil. Here he's doing it
no,
for...
but you don't have to, you say royal, whatever, you don't...
Right, you have to have some type of a svar, right? No, you can't Can't make for chayil. Can't make on Yom Tov. You say, you know, Mahavna Simcha Matzah Yom Tov. You're gonna make a little bit more. You know, enough. You know, that we can't do. But on this halach, actually, there seems to be contradicted from the following brisa. The brisa says matilin sheikha b'moed. You're allowed to make beer on chol hamoed if it's for the Yom Tov purposes. Shlo tzarech hamoed also, but if it's not for Yom Tov purposes, it can be forbidden. And the sechet sheikha t'marim, whether it's date beer, whether it's barley beer. Now, says the brisa of Avapesh Yashin, although he has old beer, ma'adim, he could go ahead and be crafty, v'sheisim and achadash, and he could drink from the new. In other words, he could say that, oh, I need it for Yom Tov, although he doesn't really need it. He has a whole fridge stocked with beer, but he could say, oh, we know we need fresh beer, whatever, although he doesn't really need it. So you see, you could do harama. He says, you're right, Tanoi, it's a machlekes Tanoim, if you could or not. The Tanakh in the Brisa clearly is a machlekes. Tanakh says, Imari Mekachi, you could not make such a trick. Because Yudam says, Marim, you could make such a trick, and that it seems to be the halacha actually that you could do harama, and you could say, yeah, I need it for Yom Tov, and I'm going vegetable picking, and you know, I'm coming back with bags and bags, and say, I don't really need it for Yom Tov. Yeah, I need it for Yom Tov, and then if you have leftovers, which you, of course, you're going to have leftovers, that would be permitted. Now, the Gemara brings the story regarding to this halacha that Rav, he had his workers that were harvesting his crop. Moed. Shmuel heard about this. He was very bothered about this. Says the Gemara, why was he bothered? Let's say Shmuel, who was particular about this, he holds like an individual Tana. That was the brisa that we quoted that says when it's attached to the ground, even the total loss is going to be usher. We said, wait a second, that's like Rabbi Yossi who's a das yachid. So why is he bothered by the fact that Rav was doing this? Says the Gemara, no. Rav's field was a grain field of wheat. It's not such a loss. So that was bothering Shmuel. Because regarding the harvest of barley, that he doesn't hold like Rabbi Yossi that's going to be usher. You're right. If it's mechubel karka, it's not necessarily usher, but it's got to be a davar avid. Wheat is not such a davar avid. They were how you allowed to do it. But barley, I could forgive, he says, but not for wheat. But then the Gemara says, "V'Rav my time avarov." It's talking, why did Rav do this? It's not such a loss, and so why did he let it be harvested? It says Gemara, he didn't have what to eat, and we said you don't have what to eat. Even that price that says now the mechuppah, even that price says you're allowed to do it. Now, but Ushmuel loisaymu kameh, but they didn't finish telling the story to Shmuel. They didn't tell him he doesn't know what to eat. Therefore, he's bothered. Like a lot of stories, loisuma kameh. We don't know the end of the story, and therefore we're writing on our comments on the blogs that I can't believe this, whatever this now. But you don't know the whole story. First, hear the whole story, and then maybe think about your comment. But therefore, that's why Shmuel was bothered, particularly about what Rav did, because he didn't hear the whole story that Rav didn't have what to eat. Uinami, another reason why he was particular is Adam Chashav Shami. A distinguished personality is different. That Rav shouldn't have done like this, even if he didn't have what to eat, because when it's to a grace mensch titazach. People say, oh, okay, yeah, whatever, and it's not the same thing, and it gets out of hand. Similarly, the Gemara brings that Adam Chashav Shani, Yehuda Nasiya, not Yehuda Nasi, he's a grandson, Nafak, who went out in this courtyard on Shabbos, he was wearing a certain ring of metal, where the seal of it is almog, a certain type of a wood. Another thing he had done was he drank water that was heated up by a non-Jew. But Rabbi heard about these actions of Yehuda Nasiya and he was bothered by this. So Rabbi Yosef says, but why was he bothered with what the Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya did? Because of the ring he was wearing in this courtyard. Hatani, we learn the Brayah says, Hashidin, a brooch, certain type of a jewelry, Hanazamim, and nose rings, Rataboyas, and regular rings. It's like regular vessel you could carry in your courtyard. So what's the problem where he was wearing this ring? If it's because he was drinking water that was heated up by the non-Jew, he went into Dunkin' Donuts and he got some hot water, he got a 7-Eleven that was heated up by the non-Jew, what's the problem? It says, whoever eats something that is as it is, meaning water is something that could be, you could drink it as it is, raw, so to speak. There's no halacha of bishul akam, a very important klal, which there might be other problems going into these stores, but at least for the bishul akam problem, there's no problem. So why was he bothered? So again, it says the Gemara Adam Chashav Shami. A distinguished personality is different. He should be more stringent on himself, and he should not have gone out with this ring into his court. He should not drink this water heated by a non-Jew, because again, people will take this a little bit further and say, oh, I saw the rabbi wearing his ring, and these guys walking on him, Shasarabim, and he says, I saw the Gentile cooking water for him, right? So he's going to have his Gentile cook stuff for him, there's Bishalakim going on, and people make these mistakes actually. People have their non-Jewish help, and Bishalakim is happening left and right. They don't realize that these things are cooking, and it's a problem. So therefore, if you're a person, you're held to a higher standard. People have told me this directly. Says, if you do it, yeah, I would, you know what I'm saying? So, someone that they think is like in a certain status, so you have to be very careful. Amar Chanam Rabbi says, a person could cut a palm tree on Chol Moed, even if he only needs the sawdust, which falls from the cutting, that would permit you to cut the trees, even though you really only need a secondary element, but that's the way to get the sawdust, that you're allowed to do that. But lying about Abaya cursed whoever would do that. Now the Gemara actually brings a story that Rav Ashi Havali Abba, he actually had a forest, Beshalanya, which is the name of the city, and he went to cut the trees on Chol Moed. So only Rav Shloimy Schwartzberg Rav Ashi says, my title, what are you thinking? Because the Kamar of Chanal Rabbi says, a person allowed to cut his palm trees on the Chol Moed, and even if he only needs the sawdust, but for sure you're allowed to cut the trees, Abaya cursed whoever's the one who's cutting down his trees. Amalei says, Lo Shmili, I didn't hear that claim. Another what he meant to say was, Lo Shmili, I don't hold of Abaya's problem with this halacha. You let it chop down your trees. Now what happened was, oh yeah, if that's the that the sawdust is so Ishtamit Narga. So he slipped, the axe slipped, and it wanted to go ahead and cut off his thigh of Rav Ashi because he violated the words of Abaya. So Shavka, he left the forest, he didn't cut it on Chol Moed because he realized that it's because he's violating Abaya's his curse that his axe fell, and he came back home and he didn't cut it down because Abaya was not happy with people that would do that on Chol Moed. Another related teaching of Yehuda, Shar L'Me'aka Kisni, he permitted to uproot flax on Chol Moed, and Lamikdal to cut Keshusa hops, L'Me'aka Shumshmi, and to tear out the sesame plant. So I understand regarding the flax, the reason why you're allowed to tear it out on Chol Moed is because you could use it to cover food items, like for example, figs and dates for the purposes of Chol Moed. You take flax and you cover it with that, so I understand the purpose. Keshusa the hops, and that's how you make beer. And you need that for Yom Tov. What's the utility of sesame plant that you'd be permitted to tear it down on Chol Moed? So he said, Chazi l'nazir. It's fit for the seeds from the sesame seeds, the isbu that are inside the plant, inside the sesame, which you make oil out of, and therefore there is utility. Remember the story that Rabbi Yana had a certain orchard. The time reached for it to be picked. So he picked the fruits of Chol Moed. Lashon, the next year, shiur kuli amal l'pardesai l'chol me'ad. Again, going back to this halacha of like a chashuv person, everyone learns. So next year, guess what? Everyone's doing a Chol Moed. The Ruv went and they took his fruit, but that was only because it ripened then. But now everyone, the whole community goes and on Chol Moed, they're picking their fruits. So after Rabbi Yana l'pardesai Rishad, that year, Rabbi Yana declared his whole orchard ownerless because it was through him that it caused a stumbling for other people, that everyone was machavim malachta b'moed. That's forbidden. You can't deliberately delay something for Chol Moed, and they picked it then. So because of that, as to be masakin for what he had done wrong, he was mafkir his whole orchard. Now look at the next Mishnah, continuing on the malachas of Chol Moed. Machnis odem peidoisa, the person allowed to gather in his produce because of robbers, which places is not really sure exactly what is the malacha of gathering. It's obvious from like a Gemara Chagiga that Ches, Chaga Asif, that Asif b'Moed is forbidden. He just doesn't know exactly what is the malacha, but you're allowed to bring in your produce if you're concerned for robbers. Also, b'shol the pishtanim in the Mishnah, you're allowed to take out your flax that's soaking in the vat, that shouldn't get ruined. Which we just mentioned before, as long as you don't deliberately, if you have time in other days of the year and you're like, Chol Moed, it's a good time, I'm busy at work, I'll do that. No, you're not do that. And actually, all these things, if you deliberately left them Chol Moed, you have to do. It has to be. You have to let it. It's forbidden to have any benefit from it. It has to go to waste. That's how far this halacha of machav malachim moed goes. Now, tell you in the brisa, although we said you could bring in your produce because of robbers, but the Brisa qualifies as long as you bring it discreetly into your house. Not supposed to make a big rash when you're doing this. Like Rabbi brings a story there of Yosef, how the Kashur, he had beams, and I lead him mama. They brought it in into his house during the daytime. I said to Rabbi Yosef, that we just quoted, as long as you do it discreetly, why doing it, during the daytime? So they said to him, no, tzina dahani, to bring in beams discreetly is yamamahu, because even during the nighttime is like daytime. It wouldn't be enough not to bring it in at nighttime, meaning I'm bringing it during the daytime because even the to do it at nighttime would require more manpower. We'd have to have big torches, big chaverim lights to see where we're going and damage the whole house. Avshamilsa, that's actually going to make a bigger tumult. Do it at night, so it's actually more convenient and less of an announcement. It's more discreet during the daytime when we could do it, and it won't be difficult to maneuver than to do it at night with all the people and all the lights and all the things. So therefore, that's why we're during the daytime. But yeah, person should, as much as possible, try to be discreet when he's bringing his produce into the house, even if he's allowed to, because of the Thank you to any time for hosting us.